Good morning. Good morning. We've had some intense lectures lately, and I want to review some of the papers that I've gone through, particularly the ones in the nonspecific protein 15 that keeps popping up as pivotal to this virus functioning. So I did dredge it up, as it were. Let's see if I can find it here. It would be in the board, I guess. Yes, this is a National Institute of Health, the molecular, constitution of this virus, and it mentions manganese once, but okay. Nendo-U, which is the cleaving part of the core virus, the thing that enables cleavage of the RNA, essential RNAs. Let me read it for you. Let's see. Enzyme. And showed to hydrolyze both single and double-stranded RNA and a specificity for cleavage immediately upstream and downstream of uridylate residues. Nendo-U exhibited optimal activity with manganese ion rather than magnesium, and it was essentially inactive with ribosubstrates. Mutation of the active site was found to be lethal. That's the manganese. From my understanding, that's the manganese, and it goes on and on and on. But it kind of skims over that one simple point. And it's the only time they mention manganese. So as we look at other articles that have just, since review mitochondria, the size of it, I mean, we've looked at many things. The copper manganese transcription RNA inhibition, that's another one that goes into manganese. There's another one, COVID-19 and manganese preference. It's, what it is? It's just a, oh gosh, this one gets all bonked up. That one doesn't work, but it's a good one. I have to get that directly on the, all right, and this is the main Texas A&M University, College Station, Texas, non-structural protein NSP15 of the SARS-CoV. We've reviewed this one before, and the use of manganese, right? And then they go into MN, not MG. At 2 to 10 millimolars were needed, but manganese, but magnesium only supports a low level of activity. Concentrations of manganese induce significant conformational changes. In other words, they put it out of business. This work presents an initial biochemical characterization of the novel coronavirus endoribonuclease. So I'm kind of poking around, just surfing, as it were. Manganese-dependent endoribonuclease required for the biogenesis of these RNA cuts. It's rich in acidic residues that coordinate these metal cofactors. And they tried to examine whether this NSP15, this nonspecific protein 15, is really an endoribonuclease that cleaves this 5-unit liter of uridylates. So it goes way into all of the specifics of that. The standard RNA cleavage assay and 5 millimeter, not millimeter, very small amounts of manganese chlorine, I guess. Okay, well, I need help to work with this, and with small amounts of manganese, cleavage products accumulated. The ability to cleave was determined under a range of manganese and magnesium, increasing manganese from 0 to 10 increased the activity. And I'm pretty sure this is where it shows that adding concentrations of manganese messed it all up. And it did. These are pretty complex papers. I'd love to work with some biochemists here. Okay. So this is a very interesting article. I would assign it to anyone who is studying this. Manganese could induce a conformational change. The concentrations needed for catalysis retroviral. The HIV uses 2 manganese that are coordinated by a network of negatively charged amino acid side chains. And the one in the COVID-19 likely coordinates it by the similar combination of acidic side chains. Although the ones participating in metal binding and the residues that participated in nucleophilic attack of the phosphodiester backbone remain to be identified. Well, we could probably backtrack and identify those as manganese shows up in biogenesis and origins of life. Okay, that we have flipped. We have flipped the proportions of oxygen, groundwater, drinking groundwater, stream water, and glucose availability on our planet. And these metals respond to that. And manganese is a big transitional, that's what they call it, transition. Nothing happens unless these metals transition the activity. Copper, calcium, iron transitions the oxygen coming to the mitochondria. And manganese has been on the sideline for way too long, and it is, we've ignored it. We don't realize the importance of it, just like vitamin C. Physiological concentrations are sufficient. All right. And there are several co-crystal of E. coli manganese ions, 2 divalent metals bound in the active site. In the active site, that's where you find manganese. So how do you deactivate it? You flood it. It's like the salt in the soup, from my understanding. You flood it with manganese and the soup is unbearable and everybody leaves the restaurant. Let's see if I can pull something out of this. The opening part of this is all messed up, but let's see. Hydrolysis demonstrate copper, zinc, and have an inhibiting effect on the ribonuclease. Metal ions. Very interesting. Then it goes, it's like two papers all smudged all over each other. Every other page is a mess. This is an older paper, 1970. We covered this paper before. All right. Well, so, a lot of this has to be furthered by other scientists. France mitochondria, Iraq mitochondria. A lot of the mitochondria density, olfactory, NIH, virus molecular, I think that's what we were looking at. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. And I want to find this COVID-2 mitochondria. Basically, the mitochondria in this, and I'll share the screen with this one if I can. The mitochondria in this COVID-19, this is a SARS-CoV-2, RNA localization to host mitochondria and nucleolus. This is Stanford, Kevin Wu, James Zhu, Howard Zhang. The 5 and 3 unit viral untranslated regions possess the strongest, most distinct localization signals. Mitochondrial localization signal. The mitochondrial localization signal in the double membrane vesicle, a critical stage in the coronavirus life cycle. Well, so there are metals involved, and manganese is the metal. Okay, so I think that as we move forward in zeroing in on putting this virus where it belongs, which is out of our bodies. Now, hey, let's pretend we were way back millions of years ago when mitochondria were moving in, probably hurting, destroying, killing certain smaller. We always talk about Gallionella. That is iron plus manganese plus water plus oxygen, and you find that in iron ore mines. So what are we looking at? Oh, plenty of that in the world, plenty of that in the world. This is the second or third most abundant material. Manganese has comes in various forms, but it's flaky, it mixes with water, and it also is very reactive with iron, which is, probably, I don't know what proportion iron is, but there's a lot of it on the planet. Maybe the first, let's say it's 1 or second, and I stand to be corrected. So iron is embedded in ground rock. This is iron ore mining. Pretend we're in Brazil, just downstream of their São Francisco water basin. Let's just pretend that's where we are. And we're in Brazil, just southwest of northeast microcephaly. Let's just pretend we're doing that. Let's pretend we're there and see what we find. It's not funny. So that's where we are. We're southwest on a hill, not so far away. And here's northeast Brazil, which is very dry, arid. And then there's a water stream, their main water source, goes from, this thing trickles all its junk downstream and it all goes up to northeast Brazil, all right? And that's the São Francisco. Boop. My question is, with all the iron, so we're looking at iron plus manganese plus aluminum to cover it up. And around the time that the microcephaly happened, this iron ore mine exploded. And if we look at Brazil, can we see Brazil on this? Let's pretend this is Brazil. Here's northeast Brazil, where all the little tiny heads were happening, and the supersized bodies. Supersized bodies, huge ears, big face, teeny tiny little brains that were compromised in first try one. Okay, so, and then we just go downstream a little bit and up the hill, and there's this iron ore mine. That around the time of microcephaly crisis, this thing actually explode, and completely contaminated much of that area of Brazil. Goodbye, everything that lived in its path. And the result was 50 million, and this is probably a low estimate, 50 million gallons of iron, manganese, and some aluminum sludge. Very concentrated. And I'd be very interested. Ooh, let me get this going here. You can see all of my scribbly. And I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a lot of shark stories, supersized sharks. So you give this iron and manganese to underwater life. That's how they, pry their oxygen out of water. Fish use manganese to get their oxygen out of water. And iron is however that works with fish. And in fact, I did some studies on that. And yeah, that supersizes. It's just flipping us back to a Jurassic area. These elements are supposed to be buried. Iron, buried. It's buried in bedrock. So how do they get it out? They combine manganese plus water, and they spray it. They spray the bedrock. That's how they get it, and that's what makes the sludge. They spray the bedrock, and iron and manganese together. It's like dynamite. And then you add aluminum, and it's like dynamite in a cyclone. It's bad. Okay, so, we have to look at our origins of life here. Okay. So I'd throw that microcephaly thing in, because with all that iron going up to these first trimester females, remember, first trimester? There it is. Remember, we talk about this a lot. I had a great talk on it yesterday with the egg yolks. A very thick membrane. Very thick. The mothers get anemic. This is a very special environment where one fertilized, one egg, and one sperm, and the mother's mitochondria have about 4 months to differentiate into like a gajillion, well, actually 1 trillion-ish brain cells, brain seeds, neuronal cells, neuronal seeds. Yeah, that's what happens. And so iron is not necessary here. if like the eggshell example from in science from the Brazilian farmers, where they actually manganese is in here, guarding, saying, "Get away, go away, go away, go away, stay away, get lost. Something special's happening in here." And then this thins out, and try to infinity, right? So no iron. Well, you've got iron sludging up the only water source for Northeast Brazil from this iron ore mine that eventually exploded. And 2 years prior to that, you have a record drought. There's a reason it exploded, because it was overproducing, like without unregulated, like 8 times overproduction. It was crazy what it was doing for years leading up to the iron ore dam just bulging over. It just exploded. But leading up to that, they were spewing stuff into the ground, and it was really dry, so it was absorbing what it was, all this sludge, extra sludge. And then after the record drought, 2-year record drought, it rained. Rained about 10, 12 months before the microcephaly shows up. This is the infinity, well, not so infinity. It's reverseology. And then you see these Cro-Magnon skull formations, or worse. So it kind of launches us back half a million years in skull formation. That's pretty clear. This is some serious stuff, serious science here. So let's, okay, I can change. Okay, great. Yeah. So that is that's when I started doing all this work and looking into the metals and I was at Hawkins when it first happened, and they were up at the podium talking about what they saw, and I was studying manganese and oxygenation, and that's what drew me to the conference. I looked at these brain scans and thought, that looks like a manganese calcification type situation. Remember the eggs we talked about yesterday? The eggs, the shell of the eggs is laced with manganese, and the more manganese, the more eggshell, thicker, harder, stronger. Well, there's Northeast Brazil, and all the mining, and they use manganese to get that iron pellets out of the wall, and there it is in the drinking water in Northeast Brazil. Manganese, iron. Let's just stick with those two. But you add aluminum, God only knows what you get. So manganese in these brain scans, you're seeing manganese around where the choroid plexus, which is exactly where manga photopere. So manganese, it obviously got in here in these microcephaly infants. That's what I saw. I saw that immediately in reading the brain scans. Oh my God, that's manganese causing those calcifications. We didn't hear much more about those calcifications, but those calcifications don't belong in Tri 1. Differentiation belongs in Tri 1. Then manganese, as things merge out of Tri 1, you get calcification. You get bones. You get a skull formation. You get, etc. This is phenomenal science. Unbelievable, cutting edge, pioneering science. And we can stop this virus with this science. Zika, Shmika. Give me a break. Here's Zika. And I asked this question many, many times. Many, many times I asked this question. to many, many scientists. Well, several questions. What are the metabolic needs of the mosquito? So that was one of my first questions. What are the metabolic needs of the mosquito? And I never got that answer. Does it, oxygen, no oxygen, it needs the blood, etc. I did get a little bit. Golly, I did more work on microcephaly than I've done on this. And this is my 75th lecture. I don't know, I'm coming up to it. But, okay, so Zika. Let's look at Zika. Zika is, it's a spherical thing, and it's got all this stuff. It looks a heck of a lot like ferritin. And what does ferritin do? It mops up excess iron. So my question, in fact, there's Zika, this big old thing. Excuse me, it's spherical, and I kept saying, tell me about ferritin and the Zika virus. How are they similar? Because scientists did find Zika got through this. Zika got through this embryonic membrane, right? And ferritin is kind of a tinier version of it, visually. And one of these days I'll get back to that, and I'll say, is this a Trojan horse? Is it a Trojan horse? And going into first trimester, if there's, so the H2O in Northeast Brazil was late. Their sole drinking water source. It's a very arid country. 2-year record drought. And they're getting from the São Francisco water basin that goes, all the cases are, let's face it. Don't have to look too far to see that. And down here up the hill was this iron ore mine that's eventually shut down, exploded into the environment, and leading up to that, it was overproducing so much and just putting it out into the arid 2-year record drought. Record drought. So all of this ground was kind of absorbing the tailings, which are iron, manganese, iron, and manganese. Sludge. So the ground was absorbing it, right? And then what happened? Then it rained. It finally rained. The Brazilian torrential rains. Now, over here is the rainforest, right? So, but that's getting its own rain over here. Northeast Brazil is arid, very arid. Arid. Very dry, arid. So they depend on rainwater, which they weren't getting, or this water basin, São Francisco. Kind of like San Francisco with an owl. Bless those dear children. They love music. They sure do. Those children love music. Okay, so, all right. So I think, you can do the math on this, or follow the dots, that once it rained, finally rained, and lo and behold, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're still having microcephaly in Northeast Brazil. These babies are still being born. Iron and manganese do not belong in first trimester gestation. Okay, well, that's how the world is. You're forgiven. We love you. Thanks for all the stainless steel buildings and skyscrapers, and China is the biggest consumer of that. So maybe China needs to stop pulling all that stuff in. Not good. Okay, so not great, I should say. So when I saw these scans, these brain MRIs and such, I was like, these calcifications in exactly these areas that this manga photopure goes to, not wanted in first trimester. Women are supposed to be anemic. All this iron is going to create these serious problems and may be associated with other issues we see in some children these days, some of the autism maybe. Need to maybe rethink giving iron to first trimester mothers. In fact, don't do it. Leave them alone. Let nature take its course, which is a pretty good course. So, all right. The truth shall set us free, and the truth shall set us free from this virus. So I saw these manganese, and so I was immediately looking for manganese in the environment, and I found all this iron ore mining and realized that manganese and water blasts iron out of rock. That's the only way they get iron out of the rock, out of the bedrock. Manganese and water. It's just, it's intense. So where does that leave us? Yeah. It's great science. It takes patience and persistence, because where there is causation, all you find is evidence. And that's what I'm finding. More evidence. And I'm putting it out there because I don't, I'm not going to shoulder all of this information on my own. But we have a real plague that's happening, and we can stop it and regroup by the information, the science of what we found. We've looked at the environment plenty. We understand that the drinking water is tainted every which way but. So as we evolved, we here's the ground. We often went with, there are a lot of these areas that still have well waters. Now they have filters above ground. They have filters, and most of them filter out the manganese, because if they don't, then there's clogging in here. There's sediment. There's, the pipes eventually get clogged up. But perhaps we can, I'm not sure if you boil manganese out. I don't know. That's what we need to look at. And in the virus, just a little bit of manganese does all the dirty work. But a lot of manganese destroys that process because it's so dynamic. All right. So that's enough, I suppose. That was a kind of a journey over into the microcephaly in Northeast Brazil. And lessons learned from that. Were there lessons? Is the Zika a ferritin masquerader? I still have not had that answer, and have asked so many scientists who studied Zika. We need to, we are scientists, and we are honest, and we are open, and that's how we work. Right? Right. That's us. That's me. That's the science I've learned. I studied under Harold Morowitz, Jim Olds, Jane Flynn, some of the top people at Hopkins. And I know Hopkins has got that integrity. They call it when it needs to be called. That's the legacy of Johns Hopkins. Okay. Mangaphotopure shows up in the same places where that manganese, where those calcifications, as I recall, and I'll look that up. That's more where there's causation, all you find is evidence. In those in those brain scans, I remember, that manganese, the calcifications, they were in the choroid plexus area, and kind of in the anterior pituitary area, and other areas that probably parallel quite exactly with our neural crest, because the neural crest comes down and creates the mandibular, the front, the lingual, and I'm not sure about where the lacrimal comes from. The eye system is a whole different thing. But if you follow those early calcifications in the microcephaly infants in Northeast Brazil, that's manganese, I believe. That is causality in manganese. Pretty cool, eh? Very exciting. What beautiful science this is. Transition metals, origins of life, biogenesis, embryogenesis, where these metals belong, where they absolutely do not belong. They do not belong in first trimester embryogenesis. But they do belong in our mitochondria to stay strong, bolstered, soldiers in the forts, 2,000 in our liver cells. All right, friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. All right, as we tarry forward on this, let's keep looking at the truth. Thank you. And I hope, Dr. Stevens, you're watching and can understand this and help me put this out there so other people can study it too and refine it. I don't know who else I can trust, because Hopkins does not shy away from the truth. God bless everyone.